Good afternoon. I guess it's just after noon, so it's good afternoon. My name is Renuka Chatterjee, and I serve as the operations leader for MISO. And let me tell you a little bit about MISO so I can kind of give you a little bit of sense to compare Switzerland and the EU. In the United States, we have several independent system operators. Think of them as countries in the EU. And we have some utilities, and they are very similar to countries in the EU. And we all work together to accomplish the policies that are made. MISO is not a policy maker, but we influence policy, we take policy, and we implement. So as we head into the discussion today, we don't own any assets. MISO does not own any assets, so that independence gives us some boldness to make recommendations on how we plan the future. Today, I'll focus on what we call the reliability imperative. And the word imperative was chosen intentionally to show a sense of urgency with which we must move. I was hearing a discussion earlier that the renewables aren't coming faster. I will say in our footprint, the renewables came faster. And I'll tell you, in 2005, when we were operating the grid, we had less than, about 1/10 of the wind we have today online. And if gigawatts mean anything to you, that we had like 1 gigawatt of wind, and now we have 25 gigawatts of wind. So that's so much more wind we have today. So we put this imperative together, and the plan has 4 parts to it. Operations of the future, which I'll discuss in detail today, will touch on market redefinition. And then the 2 things we'll not talk about today are the market systems enhancements. So our technology systems that we use to operate the grid need transformation. So there is much better technology today that we need to leverage in terms of making sure we do that efficiently and securely. And there is a cybersecurity discussion this afternoon as well. And long-range transmission. Again, I'm not familiar with the locations of wind, but in the United States, the wind is located much, much farther away from where the load centers are, where the demand centers are. And it's not co-located where the current gas and nuclear plants are. So we need new transmission to bring that wind. So the long-range transmission plan is the plan that enables new transmission infrastructure. And it's one of the most controversial topics, I would say, in the United States in terms of building transmission lines. So with that, let's get into a little bit on the operations of the future and market redefinition. We kind of divided these 2 areas into further objectives, and I'll cover the market redefinition first on this next slide. Uncertainty and variability. I talked about how wind moved from 1 gigawatt to 25 gigawatts, and we had to learn how to operate better with that wind. I'll give you a couple of examples from a grid operator's perspective, right? So I love all fuels. I'm fuel neutral. I'm pro-climate. I'm all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, we need the lights on, right? We'll miss the Wi-Fi before we miss the light bulb. So modern world does not know how to function without electricity, and much less the utilities like sewage, transportation, water, all need electricity as well. So in my experience, I've seen with the wind that we use, which is great, right? It provides low-cost energy, which we all have a social responsibility to do. But in December of 2021, we had 36 straight hours of no wind in the entire footprint, literally 0. When that happens, what do you rely on, right? So where is the energy going to come from? I mean, again, I'm indifferent where it comes from, but we need to keep the lights on. So it's our job to make those questions transparent. I'll give you another example. In February of 2021, many of you may have heard the Texas cold. So we don't operate in Texas, but we have a small portion of Texas in the MISO region. There was 12 straight days of low wind for much of the United States, the eastern and southern part of United States. 12 straight days, that was a lot of cold. So public safety, again, weather-wise, there are parts of the United States that get really cold, so electricity is not an optional thing, at least for the December months or the winter months. So learning how to manage that uncertainty and variability is a question for us now. We can turn everything on. We can have every generator that we have turn it on and make sure we keep it on. But that isn't good enough because that raises prices. So we are designing reserve products to help manage that uncertainty and variability. Resource models and capabilities. More recently, we have enabled the storage model, the electric storage model. Most of the storage, I'm aware, gives you 4 hours of storage. But think about when I referenced 30 hours of no wind, batteries still need to evolve to make sure they can cover that kind of storage need. Location, one of the things that we learned as we started to redesign the grid with the renewable energy sources was the constraints that we knew of were different. So pockets of our region were more difficult to get electricity to. So we have to study those local regions to make sure we are keeping a close vigil. So that's another important element. Coordination. Someone earlier said a lot of energy flows through Switzerland. If you look at MISO or our website, we are like a strip that goes from north in the Manitoba all the way to Gulf in the south, right through the middle of the country. So a lot of flows go through us. So we have 5 other independent system operators we work with. We have what are called joint operating agreements, and we have also market-to-market agreements where we can exchange energy, we can ensure that the lights stay on across the border footprint, and that needs to evolve as well as the generation sources change. So I'll start on the operations of the future, which is my passion for sure. You'll probably be able to tell as I talk through it. Many years ago, much like the artist back there, I met him earlier today, Michael, during coffee, and we were having a meeting talking about how we are going to operate the grid in the future, and one of our artists drew this picture for us, and I wanted to take a minute to cover. The dashboard represents the different kind of analytics that the control room must evolve to. In the old days, our operators knew what the big generators are, the nuclears, you remember them, you make decisions. With a lot more diverse generation portfolio, we need more analytics, more information at the tip of their fingers so they can make decisions. The empty chair represents something, at least for the US, we have a workforce that is going to, 30% of our workforce that does the grid operations is going to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. We're trying to get ahead of that to make sure we have enough people to operate the grid. Simultaneously, we're also transitioning the skills. In the past, past experience was a good indicator of what you must do. It is still relevant, but as you look into the future, we have to have a more insights-based operation. And I don't need to underscore technology. It is at the core of everything we do. So operations of the future has 5 major work streams, and I'll cover a couple of these. Operations preparedness. So when we think about preparedness, we are drilling scenarios. What decisions are we going to make? How are we going to make transparent information? So today, we didn't do this in the past, but since about 3 years, I think, we post a weekly forward-looking sufficiency report so people can get a sense of what kind of electricity is going to be available, and if there aren't, both the members can work with the public, the politicians, everybody can get involved and say, well, what actions are we going to take? MISO is projecting we could be short in a week. So that kind of preparedness is needed. Critical thinking capabilities, right? So we learned that wind in our North Dakota, where it can go to like minus 30, 40 degree Fahrenheit, those wind farms needed cold weather packages. It's just a matter of installing them. We didn't know. So the wind farms actually shut down when the temperature got to minus 20. That was a huge opportunity for us to learn. So critical thinking capabilities, asking the right questions. And then ultimately, flexible operations workforce is also something we are trying to build that helps us prepare to the operations of the future. Critical communications. I'll tell you, MISO app, you can get it on your phone. It was released 2-3 years ago in a need to create transparency. And we have everyone, all the politicians, everybody gets information when we actually issue notifications. everybody gets notifications at the same time. And it was a huge need because you don't want to shock anybody, right, that we are going to be short. Because we don't own any assets, we have to show what's available and what's not available and kind of make that communication. Auto event recording. One of the things we try to do is we look back and say, how well did we do? And today it involves a lot of operator interviews. How did the grid work? And when we get questions all the way from our utilities in the region to politicians, we want to be able to explain what happened. So we are trying to create, much like the flight recorder systems, to record what we did. I'll cover a couple of more things so we can have time for questions. Operational continuity, because you have cybersecurity in the afternoon, I want to touch on this a little bit. The toolkit is very important here. So we want to make sure we have, we can't operate the grid manually, particularly when you have a large, diverse resource portfolio. We want to make sure that we have manual processes or other backup processes. You could have 2 data centers, but they both may be susceptible because they probably look like, it's like having 2 cell phones. They look very similar. You may want something different. So building that business continuity tool is essential. Control room redesign. We had a very traditional way of control room layout. People have monitors, there are big wall boards. We are actually redesigning the control room to make sure there are more appropriate tools for the people and how the jobs are evolving. Interoperable systems, we want our market systems, our utility systems to talk to each other in real time so information is available. And then seamless multi-site operation. So this is using those features of the cloud to make sure as a grid operator we can at all times have access to the tools we need to maintain reliability. I didn't touch on situational awareness, and I think there is something called predictive risk analysis we are working towards. So as we look, a month out, a year out, earlier today we talked about, someone referenced spring and fall weather. It's maintenance season, and we tend to see a lot of supply shortages during that time. It's actually not in summer. Summer is easy, everything is on. But we are having more difficulty during the automated, in these fall and spring scenarios where we are trying to do predictive analysis. Now, we can argue about whether the scenario was too risk-averse or was it appropriately quantified, but at least we will do the analysis and we provide the scenario, what's going to happen, and then we can get some engagement from the appropriate entities to make necessary policy. This is where I say we influence policy by providing information to the policymakers. I have a small video that I wanted to show on the operations of the future, and after that, I'd be happy to take questions. There's not much in here other than, we have to continue to invest in technology to make sure we happen. I'm sure talent was already a hard thing to manage, and COVID has not helped it. So we continue to struggle with maintaining trained talent. And then, as many of you know, a lot of the grid operations requires you to be on site, so the remote work does not work for us. Our operators through the entire COVID were in our buildings operating the grid. So that's something we are also learning how to, transition as we learn new skills to work remote. And again, retaining and managing the same talent is a huge opportunity right now in the next couple of years. I don't know how long it'll take for the dust to settle post-pandemic, but that's something we are actively working on. So in conclusion, I wanted to show a short video that describes our future operations. I guess.
Technology is rapidly changing the way electricity is produced, distributed, and consumed. Grid operators like MISO now have better access to tools and processes to ensure efficient reliability. For example, machine learning techniques combined with high-speed computing can provide useful insights into the dispatch of generation, identification of load patterns, and mitigation of transmission congestion. On a typical day, a control room operator will have instant access to essential data, leading to proactive decision-making in real time.
Electra, give me a status update.
Conditions in the MISO footprint are stable.
The current load is 92,417 megawatts. The projected peak load for today is 112,449 megawatts, occurring at hour 17. There are no active system alerts, warnings, or events.
Electra, what does south sufficiency look like?
Currently, there is a 6% capacity margin with a load of 29,102 megawatts. There are 2,000 megawatts of imports, and the regional dispatch transfer is 1,800 megawatts flowing north to south, with 800 megawatts stranded.
Electra, what's causing these stranded megawatts?
The stranded megawatts are a result of the Grimes to Mount Zion 138 kilovolt line for the loss of Grimes to Ponderosa 230 kilovolt line, driven by the Perky to Diana 345 kilovolt line forced outage in Southwest Power Pool.
Electra, run a study and provide alternative options.
Here are 3 options to improve capacity.
Electra, select option OA2.
To confirm, you would like to send a start notification to the Sabine Unit 4 generator, is that correct?
Yes.
The start has been issued for the Sabine Unit 4 generator.
In the future, MISO's ability to deliver exceptional value hinges on our ability to anticipate and enable a shift toward a more digital future. Harnessing the power of innovative technologies could allow operators to work proactively rather than reactively to help keep the lights on.
And Electra is modeled after Siri and Alexa and whatever virtual assistant you're used to. Again, we don't actually have this, but it's a vision we are aspiring to, and that's the sense of information we need at our fingertips to operate the grid more reliably. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Chatterjee, thank you.